Good morning. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Juliane Sauer, and I will guide you together with my colleague Sibylla Martinelli through this webinar on the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Individual Fellowships. Both of us are the Swiss national contact points for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. This is the outline of today's event. After a brief explanation about the setup, I will give you a short introduction on the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions in Horizon 2020 and on the status of Switzerland. Sibylla will then continue with the details on the Marie Skłodowska-Curie individual fellowships. We will give you some further information for your need, and in the end you will have the possibility to ask your questions during the chat. This is the outline and setup of the webinar. The big window will always show you the main slide of the presentation. In the upper right-hand corner, you have a photo of the current speaker, and below you will find the chat window for your need. In case you have any questions, we encourage you to ask them during the presentation already. We will collect them, and at the very end, we will answer them as much as we can. For your information, this webinar will be recorded and will be put onto the Euresearch's YouTube channel afterwards. We will send you a follow-up email in the next couple of days with a link to the YouTube channel and also the PDF of the presentation. A short introduction on the status of Switzerland in Horizon 2020. You can see below the 3 pillars of Horizon 2020: excellent science, industrial leadership, and societal challenges. Switzerland is currently partially associated to Horizon 2020. That means the excellent science pillar is fully associated, whereas the other 2 pillars, there Switzerland counts as a third country. The Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions are, with other actions of Horizon 2020, such as the ERC or FET, part of the excellent science pillar. For you, that means that any Swiss-based institution is currently fully eligible to host Marie Skłodowska-Curie Fellows. So there is no problem for you to take part in case you want to come to Switzerland. However, this partial association will be the case until the end of 2016. We do not yet know what Switzerland's status will be in the next years, but Euresearch, of course, will inform all researchers about the ongoing negotiations. Marie Skłodowska-Curie was the outstanding researcher who inspired the European Commission to set up the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. Already 100 years ago, she said, "After all, science is essentially international, and it is only through lack of the historical sense that national qualities have been attributed to it." Marie Skłodowska-Curie was a mobile researcher. She moved from Poland to France in 1891. And she was also the first woman to be awarded a Nobel Prize and the only woman to be awarded in 2 fields, in physics and in chemistry. Keep in mind, she was a mobile researcher, and this is what is important for these individual fellowships. The general aims of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions are the following ones: attract and retain research talent to Europe, promote sustainable career development in research and innovation, ensure excellent and innovative research training, and develop good and innovative training schemes. Brain gain and brain circulation is important. Research is essentially international. The general features of the MSCA. There's an overall budget of more than 6 billion euro awarded to the MSCA over the course of 2014 to 2020, the lifetime of Horizon 2020. There are 9 calls every year. The current work program, so the outline of the actions 2016 and 2017, foresee more than 1.6 billion euros. All Marie Curie actions follow the bottom-up approach. That means any kind of research can be funded. There are no predefined topics for you. Research can be interdisciplinary, can be innovative and new. But physical mobility of the researcher is a key requirement. It is open to researchers of any nationality, So it does not matter which kind of passport you have now or if you have, for example, double nationality. And it's also open to all domains of research and innovation. There are 5 different actions. NITE, researchers NITE, you might have heard of it. RISE, ITN, and co-fund, which are primarily driven by a host institution. And the individual fellowships, the only individual-driven action, where the fellow is in the center of the action. The scope of these fellowships? Transnational fellowships are awarded to the best and most promising so-called experienced researchers. The objectives? To enhance the creative and innovative potential of these researchers of any nationality at postdoctoral level and beyond, and to provide opportunities to acquire new knowledge by working on research projects in a European context or even outside Europe. The researcher is in the center of these actions. The impact? Ideally, such a fellowship should strengthen the researcher's contact network and also of the host organization, and shall help to release the full potential of researchers and catalyze significant development in their careers in both the academic and also the non-academic sectors. You do not carry out such a fellowship on your own. You would need an eligible host organization. Quite typically, a university comes to mind, but this is not the only possibility. You could also carry out your research project in a public or private research institute, in an international organization or in an international European interest organization such as CERN, or even in industry. That means any kind of company, including SMEs, provided they have the right infrastructure and supervision for you. The eligible researcher has to fulfill 2 conditions. The first one is the level of experience at the point of time of the deadline. This year's deadline is the 14th September 2016. And if you want to take part in this year's call, you have to have, on the 14th of September, either your PhD or at least 4 years of research experience. You cannot be eligible if you are a so-called early-stage researcher. That means you do not yet have your PhD or have less than 4 years of research experience at the point of time of the relevant deadline. There are no exceptions to this rule. But in case you should not yet be eligible, there will be a similar call next year. This was one criterion. The other one is the so-called mobility rule. Keep in mind, as I said, Marie Skłodowska-Curie was a mobile researcher. This inspired the mobility rule. If you want to take part, you have to have at the deadline, have to follow the mobility rule. The researchers shall not have resided or carried out their main activity in the country of their future host organization for more than 12 months in the 3 years prior to the reference date. This is the relevant deadline for the submission of proposals, 14th of September. There are a couple of exceptions for the Career Restart Panel, Reintegration Panel, Societal and Enterprise Panel. My colleague Sibylla will explain to you the further details. The mobility rule applies for the Global Fellowship only to the outgoing phase. Typically, you would have a fellowship for up to 2 years in another research institution, but you can also have a secondment. That means for a single period or even several shorter mobility periods, you could go to another institution additional. It does have to be in Europe. It can be also another university, but it could also be an enterprise, for example. The duration of the fellowship defines the maximum duration of secondment. It is important to keep this in mind when you set up your fellowship application. Now my colleague Sibylla will explain to you all the details and explain to you in further detail the 2 types of fellowships.
So good morning also from my side. So there are basically two types of individual fellowships. On the one hand, there is the European Fellowship for fellows coming to or moving within Europe. And on the other hand, there is the Global Fellowship for fellows from Europe going to third countries and returning to Europe. I'm going to explain you these two types of fellowships in a bit more detail right now. First of all, I would like to point your attention to the fact that the 2016 call for European fellowships proposals has a reserved budget of 189.5 million euro, and it is currently open and has its deadline on the 14th of September this year. To be eligible for a standard European fellowship, the researcher must be a so-called experienced researcher, which means she or he must, at the deadline for the submission of proposals, be in possession of a doctoral degree or have at least 4 years of full-time equivalent research experience. The researcher may be of any nationality, but must move or have moved from any country to the member state or associated country where the beneficiary is located. The researcher must comply with the mobility rule, which says, as my colleague Juliane already mentioned, that the researcher must not have resided or carried out the main activity in the country of the host organization for more than 12 months in the 3 years prior to the deadline. Researchers can apply for funding for 12 to 24 months. So the project proposals are submitted by the host organization in liaison with the researcher. The host organization is represented by the supervisor. Proposals for individual fellowships involve a single host organization established in a member state or associated country. The beneficiary is the host organization that recruits the experienced researcher under the conditions established in the grant agreement and ensures, through appointment of a supervisor, the necessary training of the researcher. The supervisor will legally act in the name of the organization until the grant preparation phase, and the beneficiary signs the grant agreement, receives the funding, claims cost, and takes complete responsibility for executing the proposal, the project. The project should be written by the experienced researcher. It should have realistic and well-defined objectives in terms of career advancement or resuming a research career after a break. The project should contain a concrete plan of training through research for 12 to 24 months at the host organization's premises under the direct supervision of the supervisor. Typical training activities include, for example, primarily training through research, then also hands-on training activities for developing skills, specific scientific skills like new techniques or instruments, and also transferable skills like entrepreneurship, proposal preparation to request funding, patent applications, management of IPR, and so on. Also, a training activity could be taking part in research and financial management of the action, or communication, outreach activities, and horizontal skills. Also, training dedicated to gender issues, for example. For a standard European fellowship, researchers fulfilling all eligibility conditions may apply for one of the 8 scientific panels, according to the topic of their research proposals. These panels are chemistry, social sciences and humanities, economic sciences, information science and engineering, environment and geosciences, life sciences, mathematics and physics. During the evaluation, each scientific panel will have a separate ranking list. The Career Restart panel is a multidisciplinary panel of the European Fellowships, which provides financial support to individual researchers who want to resume research in Europe after a career break. for example, after parental leave or working outside research. The applicant will have to indicate at submission stage in which of the 8 scientific areas their proposal fits best in order to have the optimal expert allocation. Following evaluation, there will be one ranked list for all career restart proposals. Researchers applying within this panel can be of any nationality, but the beneficiary must be a participant located in a member state or associated country. And to be eligible for this panel, the researcher must also have moved or must move from any country to the member state or associated country where the beneficiary is located. The Career Restart Mobility Rule says that the researchers must not have resided or carried out their main activity in the country of their host organization for more than 36 months in the 5 years prior to the deadline for submission of proposals. And last but not least, the researcher must have undertaken a career break in research. The experienced researcher must not have been active in research for at least 12 months prior to the deadline for submission of proposals. The Reintegration Panel is a multidisciplinary panel of the European Fellowships dedicated to researchers who want to return and reintegrate in a longer-term research position in Europe. Also here, the applicant must indicate at submission stage in which of the 8 scientific areas his or her proposal best fits in order to have the optimal expert allocation. Following evaluation, there will be also one ranked list for the reintegration panel proposals. To be eligible for this panel, the researcher must not only be an experienced researcher, but also a national or long-term resident of the member state or associated country. So here is a difference to the standard European Fellowship and the Career Restart panel. Here, nationality of the researchers is taken into account. The beneficiary must be located in an EU member state or associated country, and the researcher must move or have moved from a third country to the member state or associated country where the beneficiary is located. The researcher must comply with the reintegration mobility rule, which says that he or she must not have resided or carried out the main activity in the country of his or her host organization for more than 36 months in the 5 years prior to the deadline. In the 2016 individual fellowship call, there is a third multidisciplinary panel, the Society and Enterprise panel, which is dedicated to career opportunities for experienced researchers who want to work on a project in an organization from the non-academic sector. The researcher can be of any nationality, but must move or have moved from any country to the member state or associated country where the beneficiary is located. The researcher must comply with the Society and Enterprise Mobility Rule, which is the same as for the other 2 multidisciplinary panels and says that the researcher must not have been in the country of the future host for more than 36 months in the 5 years prior to the call deadline. Beneficiary must be an entity from the non-academic sector. That's one condition in this panel. And the non-academic sector includes all non-academic workplaces of researchers from industry to business, including SMEs, also government or civil society organizations like NGOs, trusts, foundations, etc. It includes also some cultural institutions, museums, hospitals, or also international organizations like the UN or the WHO. The 2016 call for global fellowship proposals has a reserved budget of 29 million euro. It is currently also open and has its deadline on the 14th of September this year. Global fellowships are composed of an outgoing phase during which the researcher undertakes a secondment to a partner organization in a third country, and a mandatory 12-month return period to a host organization, the so-called beneficiary, located in a member state or associated country. The researcher must be an experienced researcher, and he or she must be national or long-term resident of a member state or associated country. Long-term residents are researchers who spend a period of full-time research activity of at least 5 consecutive years in one or more member states or associated countries. The researchers must move or have moved from any country to the partner organization located in the third country, and the researcher must comply with the following mobility rule. He or she must not have resided or carried out the main activity in the third country where the initial outgoing phase takes place for more than 12 months in the 3 years prior to the deadline for submissions of proposals. The beneficiary must be located in a member state or associated country. The partner organization must be situated in a third country and is the entity where the initial compulsory outgoing phase takes place. Experienced researchers apply jointly with their host institution, with one host institution who is located in a member state or associated country for a research project that has an initial outgoing phase in a partner organization in a third country. The host institution recruits the experienced researcher and appoints also the supervisor. The partner organization nominates a supervisor for the experienced researcher and provides a letter of commitment. I will come to that in a moment. Partner organizations do not sign the grant agreement and do not recruit the researchers and thus do not claim costs. As for the European Fellowship, the project of a global fellowship should be written by the experienced researcher. It should have realistic and well-defined objectives in terms of career advancement, and the project should also contain a concrete plan of training through research for 12 to 36 months at the host organization's premises. And also, as for a standard European fellowship, in the global fellowships, researchers fulfilling all eligibility conditions may apply for one of the 8 scientific panels according to the topic of their research proposal. For the global fellowship, the career restart and the reintegration in the society and the economy panel are not, as a society and an enterprise panel, are not applicable. One word to the letter of commitment which partner organizations need to provide in the global fellowships. This letter of commitment must demonstrate the real and active participation in the proposed action, and it must confirm its precise role that is already clearly described in the proposal, the precise role of the partner organization. There is no template available, and the letter should be like an up-to-date letter, which means it should be issued after the call publication date. It should not have a date already a year before. It should include a header or stamp to be easily recognized as coming from a specific institution, and it should be signed by the legal representative or someone with equivalent authority. The timeline for the 2016 call is the following. The call is open, as I mentioned, and submissions can be made until 14th September this year. From October to December, the proposals will be evaluated, and the first possible starting date will be in May 2017, and the last one in November 2018. This is to show you that the individual fellowships are not just a regular research proposal where you describe your research project and that's it. Here you need to address really various other things that have nothing to do with your actual research project. And I would like to come back to what Juliane was talking about in the beginning of this webinar, when she explained the scope and aim of the individual fellowships of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. So having in the back of your head the policy background and the Marie Skłodowska-Curie work program, we can say that the expected impact of the individual fellowships at researcher level is to have an increased set of skills leading to improved employability and career prospects, both in and outside academia. Then also an increase in higher impact research and innovation output. More knowledge and ideas should be converted into products and services, and there should be a greater contribution to the knowledge-based economy and society. At organization level, the individual fellowships should enhance cooperation and help building stronger networks, and they should contribute to establishing better transfer of knowledge between different sectors and disciplines, as well as to boosting the research and innovation capacity among the participating organizations. Finally, at system level, the expected impact of the individual fellowships is better quality research and innovation, first of all, contributing to Europe's competitiveness and growth and strengthening Europe's human capital base in research and innovation. Also, an increase in international, interdisciplinary, and intersectoral mobility of researchers is expected, as well as better communication of research and innovation results to society, and an increase in Europe's attractiveness, finally, as a leading destination for research and innovation. It is advisable to have the expected impact at the different levels in the back of your head while writing your research proposal. So what is new in 2016 compared to previous calls? First of all, there's a new panel, the Society and Enterprise panel that I introduced to you before. In the 2016 individual fellowship call, the call description is instrumental in understanding the evaluation criteria, I think. And we strongly recommend to really analyze the call description. Then the evaluation criteria have been adapted. We recommend to have a close look at the evaluation criteria. And then also part B must be now submitted as two different documents, not as one document, as in previous calls. Okay, as most of you are not only doing your research for the fame, but also for the living, you might be interested in the financial details of the individual fellowships. First of all, for most researchers, this is good news. Applicants are not required to indicate the amount of the estimated EU contribution in the proposal. This will be automatically calculated from the information provided in Part A of the proposal, using the rates, allowances, and coefficients given in Table 4 of Annex 3 to the work program. The calculations are done based on the information you feed into the system when submitting a proposal. And the financial support for Marie Skłodowska-Curie individual fellowships takes the form of a grant covering up to 100% of the costs for the duration of the fellowship. The financing is based on a funding mechanism that relies on unit costs, where unit cost is a pre-calculated cost for the implementation of this action. To obtain the total of the budget, there is a simple formula. You just multiply the value of the unit costs as they are defined in the work program times the number of the units. The EU contribution covers the recruitment of the researcher to be trained, research training and networking costs, management and indirect costs. And the maximum amount you will get will be fixed in the grant agreement. And the unit costs are divided into two groups. the researcher unit costs, and the institutional unit costs. The money that goes to the researchers, the so-called researcher unit costs, is composed of a living allowance of 4,650 euro, a mobility allowance of 600 euro, and, if eligible, a family allowance of 500 euro. The money that goes to the host institution, the so-called institutional unit costs, are composed of the research, training, and networking costs of 800 euro and management costs and overheads of 650 euro per month. The living allowance is adjusted through the application of a correction coefficient for the cost of living according to the country in which the host organization is located. The adjusted amount will not change in case of secondments to a partner organization in another member state or associated country. And for the outgoing phase of the global fellowship, the country correction coefficient of the destination third country partner organization will be applied. However, the adjusted amount will not change in case of secondments to a partner organization in another member state or associated country. Yeah. And the country correction coefficients that will be applied, they are indicated also in part 3 of the work program in a table. Important to note is also that the living allowance is a gross EU contribution to the salary cost of the researcher. Consequently, the net salary results from deducting all compulsory social security contributions, as well as direct taxes from the gross amounts. So the host beneficiary may pay a top-up to the eligible researchers from another budget source in order to complement this contribution. The individual fellowship proposal, just a moment, has two parts, Part A and Part B. In Part A of the proposal, you need to provide all kinds of information of mostly administrative nature. Part A contains also the budget calculation as well as the ethics part. Part B is the actual proposal part, where you have to provide two documents in this call. In a first document, you have to provide a start page, a list of participating organizations, and then address the three award criteria: excellence, impact, and implementation. There is a page limit of 10 pages that applies to section 1 to 3. In a second document, you need to provide a CV. You have to describe the capacities of the participating organizations and ethical aspects of your project. And if you are applying for a global fellowship, you also need to provide a letter of commitment of the partner organization, where you are planning to spend the outgoing phase of your global fellowship. There is no overall page limit applied to document 2, but the CV part should not exceed 5 pages. And just a word to the page limits. They should be respected, as information is in exceeding the page limit will be marked, and reviewers will be instructed to ignore this information, which can greatly damage your application, I think. The evaluation is done by the Research Executive Agency with the assistance of independent experts. Each proposal is assessed by at least 3 experts. This is done remotely. After the remote evaluation, the 3 evaluators meet meet physically in Brussels with the goal to reach a consensus for the proposals they evaluated before remotely. There will be a consensus report, which will be fed into the panel review, where the panel ranked list will be established. And the proposals will be evaluated against the individual fellowship award criteria, applying weighting factors, and there is excellence, which weights 50% of the total weighting, impact weights 30%, and implementation 20%. Evaluation scores will be awarded for each of the 3 criteria, and all of the separate elements of each criterion will be considered by the experts in their assessment. So as evaluators need to answer the evaluation questions along the different sub-criteria that are described, you should really make sure to specifically address the award criteria in the proposal. And you should make sure to stick to the defined headings and subheadings. In the 2015 call, so in last year's call, the success rate for the European Fellowship was 14.2%, and the one for the Global Fellowship was 11.3%. So you see that this is quite a competitive funding scheme, and that is why you should prepare yourself very well if you want to be successful in this funding scheme. And to prepare yourself for the proposal writing, you cannot avoid these two documents. There is on the one hand the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions Work Program, which contains important policy background information, for example, that are necessary to address certain aspects of the proposal, as I mentioned before. And on the other hand, you will need to work with the Guide for Applicants, which is sort of like a user's manual for the individual fellowships. You should make yourself also familiar with the research participant portal of the European Commission, where you can find all the documents and templates you need if you want to write and submit a proposal. You can also find a list of national contact points on the participant portal. Each country has its own national contact points. So as an example, if you plan to go to Norway, please contact our Norwegian colleagues. Of course, if you plan to come to Switzerland or if you are based in Switzerland, please feel free to contact us, the Swiss national contact points. This year, we will offer again several applicants trainings. If you are interested, please have a look at the Euresearch events website, which is indicated on the upper right of this slide. On our website, you can also register and make yourself an account to receive news or information in your fields of interest. You see that here in this year we will have applicants trainings in several Swiss cities. And even if you are not based in Lausanne, you can go to the Lausanne workshop, but mainly these workshops are reserved for people around the cities, the respective cities. Okay, and you find a lot of information also on the, you find a lot of information about the individual fellowships also on social media. Like, for example, we have a FAQ blog or Twitter account, Facebook, and also LinkedIn. These very useful sources of information are provided by the NCP project Net for Mobility, which is coordinated by my colleague Juliane. And here you can find our contact details. My colleague Juliane and myself are the national contact points for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. And Euresearch has 10 regional offices to which you can turn to if you have questions also regarding the individual fellowships. So with this, I would like to close this part and open the chat. My colleague Juliane will answer your questions there.
So, thanks a lot, Sibylla. Now, after this overview, we received a couple of questions. The first one, how are project referees chosen or found? I am not sure if you're referring to what used to be the case in FP7. Any submitted project needed to have also listed 3 referees, 3 reference persons. This is not necessary anymore, but if you are referring to experts, so the evaluators, anybody who is active in research can become an evaluator. You will subscribe your name and your CV into a database of the European Commission. You can simply Google it, Database for Experts Horizon 2020. And in case the European Commission needs an expert in this area where you are active, they might contact you and ask you if you would like to be an evaluator for this or that call. You can always say then yes or no and then follow the further procedures. It means that every proposal is read by at least 3 researchers in the field, so you do not have to be afraid that your proposal will be read and evaluated by Brussels administrators. It's actual researchers. The second question that we received was, how are resubmitted proposals considered? Resubmitted proposals, that's the good news is if you apply this year and your proposal should not be successful, you can always resubmit in next year's call if you are still eligible. Evaluators do get the new version of your proposal, and they will only informed after they gave a grade that this was a resubmitted proposal, and they will be only shown the grade of the former year's proposal afterwards. In case there's a significant difference of, I think, at least 10 or 20% or so from one grade to the other, the panel vice chair will have a look. We usually recommend, if you are still eligible, to try again in case your first try was not successful. You do get a short feedback of the European Commission for every proposal that was submitted, and with this feedback, you can work on your proposal and really work on the mentioned weaknesses. The next question we received was how institutions can find possible candidates. This is a very nice question because this webinar mostly we addressed the individual researcher who searches for funding for his or her future career. However, the other way around is very interesting as well. If you are listening and you are a senior professor or have your own group and you are interested in getting suitable postdocs, you can simply choose somebody whom you know. We recommend you usually to use your personal network to find possible candidates. You can also have a look at the expression of interest site of the Net for Mobility website. We post there expression of interest from candidates and from institutions. But in most cases that we do know of, it makes most sense if, let's say, your colleague knows of a wonderful researcher who would like to work further on in research. You know this or that person is right now, let's say, based in Italy, and you say, okay, let's write this together. Let's give you the possibility to come for 2 years to the institution in Switzerland, for example. You can just a second, please hang on here. Please hang on now. We just controlled something technically. We received the next question. Can we give you the proposals for evaluation and evaluation summary report? What we do offer, we national contact points here in Switzerland, is indeed to have your proposal pre-screened, but only under 2 conditions. The first one is only if you are a researcher intending to go to Switzerland, to come to Switzerland, and only on the first served basis. Sorry. That means if you contact us maybe 3 days before the deadline, we most likely will not have time anymore to pre-screen your proposal. And just to give you an idea, every year we receive up to 50 or even 60 proposals for pre-screening. So the earlier you come, the better. We don't give any guarantees, but of course we are happy to give you our opinion on your proposal. But this is only the case for researchers intending to come to a Swiss-based institution. This is linked to the next question. Can candidates intending to go to Switzerland also attend the information sessions in Switzerland? Yes, of course. Also, we had this list of so-called applicants trainings. These are primarily open for researchers who would like to come to Switzerland. But of course, if you have free places and you are now based in Switzerland and would like to go to any other country, we do this on a case-by-case basis. Don't worry, in case you have doubts, contact us. How can we proceed if we don't receive weaknesses but we are scored low? There is a rule of the evaluators that unless the score is, I think if the score is higher than 4.8 out of 5 for one criterion, they don't have to indicate weaknesses. But that doesn't mean that there aren't weaknesses, only that they're really very weak. Our ideas or our recommendation would be, let us know, we can have a look, and we can maybe, ideally, hopefully, give you some tips and tricks for improvement. The next question we received are there are a couple of questions now tackling individual eligibilities. For this, I would like to recommend now, as these are very individually based, we will not treat them right now, but we do encourage you, if you're based in Switzerland or wanted to come to Switzerland, to contact us via email. You have on the slide still our email address, because individual eligibility cases can sometimes be complicated, but we will be happy to help you out there. Only we don't do it now during the webinar. We realize that there are still a couple of more questions. Most of these, from what I can see at the moment, do treat individual cases. Please do get back to us via email. I will now answer the last question. Can we have a copy of these slides? Yes, of course. You will receive a PDF of all these slides in a couple of days. Once we uploaded this webinar on our Euresearch YouTube channel, you will get the follow-up information, and you're always invited to share this video still with your colleagues, also in any other countries, and to watch it again. Again, thank you very much for your active participation. We hope you liked this webinar, and we are looking forward to supporting you with your future MSCA individual fellowship application. Thank you very much and have a nice day.